Have you ever noticed how fast a reaction happens? Someone sends a message, one sentence, one tone, one look, and suddenly your body changes before your mind does. Your chest tightens, your jaw locks, your fingers move faster. You already want to defend yourself. Maybe you type an angry reply. Maybe you shut down completely. Maybe you become cold, sarcastic, passive-aggressive. Or maybe you start over-explaining yourself like you're standing in a courtroom nobody asked for. And then, a few hours later, you think, why did I react like that? The strange part is, most people don't actually want to react that way. It just happens automatically. And today, I want to explain why. Because you don't have an anger problem. You have a nervous system timing problem. Most emotional reactions happen before thinking fully begins. Psychologically, there's a huge difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is automatic, fast, protective. A response is slower, conscious, chosen. But the human brain was not designed to prioritize calmness. It was designed to prioritize survival. So when something feels emotionally threatening, your threat system activates first, before logic, before perspective, before maturity. That's why intelligent people still send impulsive texts, still argue emotionally, still regret what they said later. Because when the nervous system detects danger, intelligence temporarily loses authority. And the important thing is this: your brain does not wait for proof. It reacts to prediction. This is the deepest misunderstanding people have about emotions. Most people think they react to events, but psychologically, that's not true. You react to what your brain predicts the event means. For example, someone says, "We need to talk." Objectively, that sentence is neutral, but one person feels nothing. Another person immediately feels anxiety. Why? Because the brain is not reacting to the sentence itself. It's reacting to the prediction attached to it. Criticism, rejection, conflict, abandonment, humiliation. The same thing happens when someone leaves you on red. Reality, it's just a seen message. But psychologically, your brain may interpret it as, I'm being ignored. Something changed. I'm losing importance. And once the brain assigns emotional meaning to an event, the body reacts as if the threat is already real. That's why reactions feel so immediate. Your nervous system is trying to protect you from a future emotional pain that hasn't even happened yet. And from an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. The human brain evolved to prioritize speed over accuracy. Because for survival, reacting too early was safer than reacting too late. Your nervous system would rather embarrass you than endanger you. So sometimes your brain creates emotional alarms, not because danger is confirmed, but because danger is possible. When people hear the word reaction, they usually imagine anger, yelling, fighting, aggression. But emotional reactivity is much more subtle than that. Some people react by becoming defensive. They immediately explain themselves, justify themselves, try to prove they're not wrong. Others react through withdrawal, silence, avoidance, emotional shutdown. Some react through sarcasm, some through coldness, some through panic texting, over-apologizing, seeking reassurance. Different personalities react differently. But the nervous system mechanism underneath is often the same: protection. Every reaction is the brain asking, how do I reduce emotional danger as fast as possible? And the answer depends on what strategy once helped you survive emotionally. Now here's something people rarely talk about. Many emotional reactions are not really about feelings. They're about status, social status, because human beings are deeply sensitive to perceived disrespect. Think about how strongly people react when they get interrupted, corrected in public, ignored, in a group dismissed with a tone treated like they're less competent. Why does it feel so intense? Because the brain interprets these moments as social threats, not physical danger. Social danger, loss of respect, loss of position, loss of importance. And psychologically, humans are extremely sensitive to social positioning because historically, social exclusion threatens survival. That's why online arguments escalate so quickly. Most debates are not really about truth. They become dominance negotiations, ego preservation disguised as conversation. And the people who react the hardest are often the people who suddenly feel emotionally small, because emotional reactivity is often an attempt to recover a sense of power. Sometimes your reactions are older than the moment itself. If someone grows up in an environment filled with criticism, unpredictability, yelling, emotional invalidation, their nervous system adapts. It learns, stay alert, scan for danger, react quickly. And that pattern can continue into adulthood even when the environment changes. That's why some people become extremely sensitive to tone. A small shift in someone's voice can trigger anxiety. A short reply can feel cold. A disagreement can feel emotionally unsafe. Not because they're irrational, but because their nervous system learned to associate tension with danger. Sometimes you're not reacting to the person in front of you. You're reacting to an old emotional memory your body still remembers. And the difficult part is that emotional memory often feels like reality. Now we get to the deepest layer, identity. People react most strongly when their identity feels threatened. For example, if someone's identity is built around being intelligent, disagreement feels personal. If someone's identity is built around being kind, criticism feels devastating. If someone's identity depends on being respected, disrespect feels unbearable. The stronger the attachment, the stronger the reaction, because the brain stops experiencing disagreement as information and starts experiencing it as danger. This is why emotionally reactive people often feel exhausted. Their nervous system is constantly protecting an identity. And here's the irony. The more fragile the ego, the faster the reaction. Because fragile identities require constant defense. A secure person can tolerate disagreement. An insecure person experiences disagreement as psychological threat. That's why calm people often seem powerful, not because they feel less emotion, but because their identity is less controlled by the immediate moment. There's a reason emotionally calm people feel different when they enter a room. People naturally trust stable nervous systems. Calmness signals safety, predictability, control. And psychologically, humans are drawn toward people who do not instantly leak emotional chaos. But this is important. Calmness is not emotional suppression. Suppression is when emotion gets buried. Regulation is when emotion gets processed without impulsive discharge. Real emotional control is not pretending not to care. It's being able to feel emotion without becoming controlled by it. Because reacting instantly may feel powerful in the moment, but long-term, impulsive reactions usually reduce your power. They damage relationships, damage credibility, damage clarity, and most importantly, they remove choice. So how do you stop reacting automatically? Not by becoming emotionless, but by creating space between trigger and behavior. Phase 1. Interrupt the reaction physically. When emotionally activated, do not immediately speak. Do not immediately text. Do not immediately decide. Because a dysregulated body creates distorted thinking. Breathe slower than your panic. Relax your jaw. Lower your shoulders. Step away from the screen for 60 seconds. You do not need insight first. You need regulation first. Phase 2. Translate the threat. Ask yourself, what is my brain predicting right now? Rejection, humiliation, loss of control, disrespect? Because once you identify the hidden fear underneath the reaction, emotional intensity usually decreases. And phase 3. Choose deliberately. Not every trigger deserves a response. Sometimes the strongest response is restraint. Sometimes the strongest response is silence. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's disengagement. And sometimes it's simply waiting until your nervous system stops treating discomfort like danger. At the deepest level, emotional freedom is not about controlling the world. It's about controlling the space between stimulus and reaction. Because that small space is where psychological freedom exists. The people who react less are not emotionless. They simply stopped allowing temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. And maybe real emotional intelligence is not becoming cold, but becoming conscious before becoming reactive. So tell me, what triggers you the fastest? Disrespect, criticism, being ignored, or feeling misunderstood? This is Jonathan's Psychology, and I'll see you in the next one.